Good morning and welcome to the first episode of the ChangeMastr Podcast. Um, Today I'm joined by Amani Iqbal. Amani is the CEO and co founder of Rematics, a company that connects companies with top tier freelance professionals. Founded in 2020 during the transformative shifts of the pandemic, Rematics specializes in financial and macro research, financial modeling, and content creation, while championing remote work opportunities and global collaboration. Amani brings over 15 years of experience in the research industry with a career that began in Dubai, where she grew up. She launched a professional journey as an equity research analyst, specializing in the media sector, before taking on diverse roles in marketing, sales, consultancy, and industry research across the UAE, UK, and beyond. In terms of education, she's an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants and past finalist of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. As the driving force behind Rematics, Amani is on a mission to bridge the gap between startups and investors. She empowers entrepreneurs to understand and interpret their financial projections and master the art of investor engagement. With Rematics, startups gain the tools to achieve financial clarity, optimize cash flow, and confidently present their business to secure funding. Today, we'll dive into Amani's inspiring story, the motivation behind founding Rematics, and the latest focus on helping startups become investment ready. So let's get started. Amani, welcome.
Hi, Herman. Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, great having you here. So I think to get us going, can you share with us your entrepreneurial journey and what led you to start your company?
So, I think I've always wanted to be CEO. It's a dream I had when I was a kid and growing up studying business, accounting. I always wanted to have my own business. I just didn't know what it was. And then I started my career as an equity research analyst, and I love the research field, the financial research industry. And I continued in it for so long. And after a while, I kind of grew tired of the corporate life and trying to climb the corporate ladder, lost my passion for it. And then I was considering quitting. And then I was wondering, okay, is this a good time? Should I be starting now? And it's my husband that pushed me to say, okay, you've always wanted to do this, why don't go for it? It's the
Yeah,
perfect time now, so just do it. And then when I wanted thought about what my business should be, it just kind of fell into place because it was what I was specialized in, and then that's how it kind of came about.
okay. Okay, so I mean, was there something special that inspired you to tackle the problem that your startup with your company is currently
Yes.
solving?
Yes, actually, on both sides. So I've been in remote work since 2014, well before the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and when remote lifestyle became common to everyone.
Yeah.
Uh, so I've been working as a remote research analyst since 2014.
Okay.
So many of my friends and relatives who knew I was working remotely, they kept asking me, "Oh, where do you find a remote job, and how do you go about finding remote jobs?" And, "Oh, we'd love to work from home, and we don't want to do a full-time job." And so I had many people come to me asking me that question, and I didn't quite know where to refer them to apart from Upwork or Fiverr.
Yeah.
And on the client side, as I was going about my work, through my network and through conversations, I realized that if you want to get like a financial model done and, you know, be, even a pitch deck or whatever, that kind of material to present to an investor, the only options available, say, 10 years ago, were the big four,
Yeah.
um, KPMGs, EYs, etc. And so that's very unaffordable and inaccessible to many of the SMEs and
Right.
startups, simply for financial reasons and also because they just need a very small thing done. And so I realized, okay, that's kind of a gap in the market where we can provide this for a much more affordable fee, as well as they can't afford to reach the big four either. So it was on both sides really, so on the client side as well as the freelancer side, that I found this gap on both sides and realized, okay, well, I can combine this and see what I can do with this to kind of fill both these gaps.
Okay. Yeah. I mean that, and that's how the world has changed, right? From when we started, or when you started that journey to now. Now it's kind
Yeah,
of, it's just everybody's remote, and
yeah,
there's so many more options available.
yeah, for sure. I think COVID kind of jump started, I mean, kick started that
Yeah.
completely.
That was a good thing that came out of COVID. That
Yes,
it made video conferences normal, and it made remote
yep,
work normal.
for
Which
sure.
is, it's actually silly if you think about it, that was frowned upon before.
Exactly.
Anyway. Okay, so as a founder, what has been like the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you overcome it?
I think initially it was, us doubting, me personally, doubting myself and looking at, okay, how am I going to get clients and how
Yeah.
am I going to gain trust and become known as someone, you could go to. And I realized, so for clients, we mainly relied on the network. Me and my co-founder, we relied
Mm,
on the network we had built during our corporate careers. And fortunately, because we'd worked in, we'd had a lot of good connections and a lot of exposure to even foreign markets during our careers, we had a lot of um, connections. And so
right.
we started through word of mouth and through people who knew us and trusted us as people in terms of integrity and who we are. And
Yeah.
then once we got started and we got a few clients, it's quickly we realized it's just a matter of maintaining that integrity, maintaining that standard of quality, information security, that personalized service that we give our clients, as opposed to the big four where you're just another person. And
Mm.
I think the combination of those helped us overcome those two challenges at the beginning.
Yeah. You mentioned something at the beginning there. Saying you have to build trust, and
Yes,
and that's something I think about often, because building trust in person is much easier, because you can
of
see the
course.
person, you can see
Yep.
their body language, you can hear the tone of their voice, you can kind of make a judgment call whether they're believable or not.
Yeah.
But it's so much harder doing that online, when the things that you put out there, like your website, or
Hmm.
some communication, has to kind of build trust remotely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think is probably the most difficult thing to get right, to build that trust
Yeah.
remotely. But yeah, so that's awesome. And in this process, have you had setbacks, and what have you learned from any such setbacks?
For sure, for sure. I mean, it's the first couple of years, especially, was completely new because we had I had to get into areas that I knew nothing about. I had to learn how to, set up a website, legal procedures, marketing, branding, all kinds of things that I may have studied a bit about before, but never did. And now we had to do like everything ourselves. But
Yeah,
always kind of, I think, throughout my life, I think it's my dad who actually taught us this, always look at things from the bigger picture. It's just a moment, it's going to
yeah,
pass. But how you're going to recover from this, and how are you going to learn from it, and what can you do to fix it?
right,
And
right,
so he's always been, telling us you can do anything you want.
yeah,
Nothing's from a very young age, because we were only three girls, and where I come from in the Asian culture,
yeah,
when you don't have boys in the family, my dad kind of made us boys, because he said
yeah.
you've got to just look after yourself and be independent. And
Okay.
so I've always had that at the back of my mind. And so every time we had a setback, I thought, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we move on from this? How can I fix
Mm,
this? What can I do
yeah,
better? And I think
right.
one of the biggest setbacks we had was 2 years ago. One of our long term clients who had been with us from the very beginning suddenly canceled their contract with us.
Yeah,
And then it kind of made us take a step back and realize that we should never be heavily dependent on one single client, and to constantly and consistently look at maintaining a very diverse portfolio of clients, so we're not heavily dependent on any one person.
right.
And that
Yeah.
was a huge lesson for us 2 years ago. which is great actually. It kind of taught us to look at things from a very different angle going forward.
Yeah. I mean, looking back now, is there one piece of advice that you think would be really valuable for a startup founder to know early on, and it's something that you only figured out later on? Is there something like that that you can share?
Yeah, for sure. One is I wish I had a lot more confidence in myself to say um, no to client, to choose clients more wisely, um,
Okay.
to not say yes. Just that if you have a gut feel that your instincts kind of speak to you. Sometimes you talk to
Yeah.
someone, they're willing to pay you a great amount of money and willing to be, give you huge projects, but your gut tells you something just doesn't sit right. Go with your gut.
Right.
Always go with your gut, because your body knows you better than you know yourself sometimes.
Mm, of
um, and always be prepared for setbacks. It's going to happen. I don't think there's a single company in the history of the world that's not had failures and
course.
not become successful as a result of it. uh,
Yeah.
and finally, always it's always better to have some cash in the bank to start with, just to cover any difficult periods, just for emergency, any kind of dry spells you may have in the middle. That's
Mm,
always us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing about getting clients or choosing your clients. In the beginning, you kind of you kind of in a, I suppose, a little bit of a desperate space because hey, I've taken
Exactly.
the plunge and I
Yep.
need to know. I can't afford to say no to anybody, right?
Exactly.
But I've,
Exactly.
I've had that same experience where you then end up spending so much time and energy on a client that you shouldn't actually be serving because they don't want to pay, or their requirements are just way beyond what they're paying you,
Yep.
and it just ends up eating all your energy and mental
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess
no,
it's a trial and error thing, because you learn as you go along. It takes a
yeah,
few mistakes to kind of
yeah,
get over that. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Then on the subject of clients, how did you approach finding your first customers? Was it just from your network, or were there any
Yes,
special things that you did? Mm,
initially we kind of reached out to our entire network, everybody on LinkedIn, on Facebook, every single contact we had, and to kind of spread the word that we started a company. And fortunately, by the grace of God as well, the two of us had, throughout our careers, maintained great relationships with people, built a lot of trust,
yeah.
built a lot of, gained a reputation for for having very high work ethics,
Hmm.
very, trusted within amongst our peers as well. So when we reached out, there were a lot of people saying, "Oh yes, of course I'll pass the word, and of course
Mm,
I'll try and get you some contacts, etc." So that's
mm,
initially how we did approach it before we kind of moved on to marketing and things like that.
okay. Yeah, and again, that thing of integrity and trust. If you have a reputation, and people have worked with you in the past, they feel they're not going to harm their reputations when they recommend you to somebody. So that's super important. That's in place. Um, in terms of building your team, you say you have a co-founder. What strategies do you use to kind of build your company culture?
So my co-founder, I mean, I knew I couldn't do this alone. I wanted to have a partner for various reasons. It's always good to
Mm,
have someone give you ideas, to share, bounce
right.
ideas off, someone to help, you deal with difficult periods and
Yeah.
setbacks, and, to be able to cover for you when you're away. And plus, we wanted this to be a kind of a global company, so we wanted to be have people located in a couple of locations as at least.
Okay.
So my co-founder Mangali, she's a very close friend of mine. We both met at my very first job, and so I've known her for nearly 20 years now.
Yeah.
And she's currently based in Sri Lanka, and so we decided that's how we're going to set it up. She's based there, and
Hmm.
I'm based here in Dubai. And I think in terms of hiring our team, so for many people who may not know this, we work only with freelancers. We don't have any full-time employees apart from
Hmm.
Angali and myself.
Yeah.
And the reason we did this was because that's the whole gap we were trying to fill, right? People who
Right.
want to work but don't want full-time jobs,
Hmm.
but very talented, very skilled people.
Yeah.
So one thing I think we learned throughout our careers, because we've been some of our close friends are the people who we worked with in HR, etc., is always hire for work ethic and integrity, because you can train people, you can develop them, you can help them further their skills, etc.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to teach ethics to someone. It's very hard to teach someone to be honest and trustworthy, especially when you're working remote. It's
Especially.
almost
Yeah.
non-negotiable to have that in place, because otherwise
Right.
nothing functions. And so we have had a couple of people join, and then as soon as we realized, okay, it's not working out, we had to cut them loose. But
Mm.
um, one way we do this is, because we work remotely, we operate on Slack in terms of communication,
Yeah.
daily communication. We're always reachable by any of our freelancers during working hours, of course.
Hmm.
um, and that's kind of how we use that, it's communication channels to kind of build that culture of
Yeah.
openness as well as integrity.
Right. Right. Okay. In terms of, you got your business now, and you guys are doing well. I presume. How do you ensure that your business remains scalable? I mean, you mentioned Slack. It's a great collaboration tool, but how do you make sure your business remains scalable as it grows?
I think it's the main thing for us is in the financial research services industry. There's so many little aspects of places where you can carve out niches for yourself, and
Yeah.
so one thing we try to look at is, okay, what do our target audience want and what's changing. And so that's how we came about, like you said, we look at providing startups with financial models, and then we realized, wait a minute, we can do the model for them, but how are they going to speak that model to investors? How are they going to make
Hmm.
investors understand that? And
Yeah.
then I can know it, but I can't physically be there with every startup founder that I
Mhm.
do work for, and hold their hand when they're presenting to investors. And so we realized, okay, that's a huge gap, and it's one that I can definitely fill,
Yeah.
because eventually you need, as a startup, any founder needs to understand their numbers. And most startups that I've come across, especially here in the UAE, actually, a lot of them are non-finance people with
Right.
fantastic ideas, great ideas, usually tech people, and who have very little awareness about numbers. And so that's something, for example, that we've looked at now. And I
Mm.
think as time goes, I think that's a key thing that we try to do, to look at, okay, what's evolving, what's changing, how can we address that, can we meet that, can we fill that need.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
and then, what is that? I mean, you're talking about, coaching these tech founders. Do you find that difficult? Is it a tough thing to get across when people they're coders and they don't know anything about numbers? I mean, is that a tough thing to do?
it can be challenging, but I've also been in education before. I've lectured economics for college students, etc. So I enjoy teaching what I know to
Okay.
people, and it can be challenging, but I think you have to kind of meet them in the space, or in the words that they understand. Sometimes you'll
Yes.
have tech examples if needed, but I think in a very interactive way, it becomes very, very interesting as well. Very, very interesting.
Mm. Yeah, because I mean that's a very very interesting niche that you got going there, because there's yeah, it's my experience as well. The deeper you go, the more niches you discover, right? And
Correct.
um, yeah, we think, well, okay, let's just build a pitch deck and then they'll be okay. But then they have to speak to people about this thing, and
Exactly.
then that falls over, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's a very cool service that you got there. Speaking of technology, and you're working remotely and you're using Slack, is there any other technology that plays a role that has played a big role in your business success?
Gosh, basically everything. So we, because
Yeah,
we work remote, we use a huge variety of tech. So obviously Gmail, all our work
yeah,
is on shared on Google Drive,
sure.
Zoom for meetings, social media for all our, even to reach out to clients or cold reach, etc., or even marketing, our LinkedIn page, so Instagram page, Facebook pages.
Mm,
Um, all of that plays a huge part. We couldn't exist without technology, to be honest.
yeah,
And more recently, we've been incorporating ChatGPT and AI tools a lot more to cut down on any repetitive tasks to help us. In the research field, you have to go through huge documents and multiple documents
yeah,
to carry out projects, and so it really helps us save time in terms of searching those and summarizing them, kind of extracting key points, etc. So and we're spreading this across our team as well to help them be more productive. So it saves us the time of doing the grunt work, and then it gives us a lot more time to kind of add insight and to spend time adding value to the
mm,
product instead of the
the
repetitive
service. Yeah,
basic work. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I was reading something the other day which kind of resonated with me. I use ChatGPT extensively as well, and
Hmm.
I've started using Grok as well now. The X platform one. It's kind of still comparing those two and see how they do different things. Um, and somebody said that the way of the future, because this AI is amazing, right? It can do
Yeah.
all sorts of things, but once you start digging deep into a particular niche, it kind of gives you these bland, overarching kind of answers. So you
Mm.
can't really get stuck into a specific body of knowledge in depth. So, and that's where these specific AI assistants come in, and they get trained then in that body of knowledge for that specific niche.
Yeah.
And I think in that space, I think we're going to see a lot of growth in terms of people building these professional assistants
Mhm.
and putting them through their paces. And you're going to see a lot of the new unicorns. I think we're going to see are going to pop up in that specific space. So yeah, it's amazing how that's changed our world and the way we do work.
So I honestly totally agree with this. The line we've heard quite a bit. AI is not gonna take your job, but people who use AI will,
There you
because
go. Yeah, yeah,
it's unavoidable, and it doesn't make sense to not use it.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, apart from AI, are there other trends or innovations in your industry that you think is something we should keep an eye open for?
I think it's just automation in general, because the financial research space involves a lot of deep diving, like you said,
Mm,
kind of digging into the nitty gritties of a lot of little things. And so we're seeing automation in many aspects. Like you said, well, we're on the lookout as well for, um, you know, companies coming up with with ways to kind of dig deeper into these
yeah,
kind of areas. And I think that's a huge that's something I'm looking forward to as well, to see
mm,
how that pans out, because that will be fantastic. But I think
yeah,
it might be a while before you can kind of train the AI assistants to kind of use those commands and prompts exactly as you need them to be.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then this morning I opened a Google Doc, and all of a sudden there's this new feature where you can make a
Mhm.
video inside of a Google Doc. I don't know if you've seen that one yet.
Oh wow, not seen that before. No.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah.
And it's literally I gave it a prompt and it created all of these different screens,
Wow.
and I can then go into each of those screens and record a short clip, and there's some text, and obviously you can edit, and I'm like, okay, this is just way beyond anything. So yeah, so content creation becomes just yeah,
Yeah.
incredibly powerful. Yeah. Okay. Being on this journey, how's being a founder changed you personally and professionally?
It's a loaded question, but yeah, I think personally, I mean, one of the main reasons I wanted to quit the corporate life was I realized, okay, I'm you know reaching middle age now, and I want to be able to have a more balanced life, and always having to work to someone else's timeline and someone else's targets didn't make sense to me anymore. And so
Yeah.
personally, it's given me a much better work life balance, fantastically.
Mm.
And apart from that, it's given me a greater sense of purpose, if that makes sense, and focus in life. Um, to be able to, even now, there are times, as you'd know as well, as entrepreneurs, and as founders, we're constantly thinking about our business, even in the shower.
Yeah.
So it just happens subconsciously. You can't switch off.
100%. Yeah.
But uh, but even when you do, this is it's like your child. It's like, my third child. I've
Mm.
got two sons, and this is like my third child. So it's, it doesn't feel like I am doing work.
Yeah.
It's my passion. It's what I love, and it's what I want to do. So personally, yeah, for sure, a lot has that way. My shift in focus, everything's become a lot more balanced and much more
Mm.
purposeful. Professionally, like I said earlier, I've had to learn skills that I never dreamt of, marketing, personal branding, networking, which as a, generally the role of a research analyst, which I was before, is where you work in by yourself a lot. You don't
Yeah.
really network a lot. It's not the kind of work where you meet people a lot, etc. So to kind of get out of that and to go into networking and to realize how
Mm.
important that was to my role as a CEO, um, it I've learned so many new skills in the last 4 years. I can't
Mm.
even imagine that, 4 years ago, that these were all foreign to me.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I kind of reflect on often is, when you're in corporate, you have to play the game, right? So
Yeah,
there's all of the kind of things that you need to do that and everybody else knows does not really add value to anything, but you've got to play those games.
yep,
And to me, one of the most freeing things was being able to be productive for as long as I want to be in every day, and not having to spend any energy or mind capacity on any of that nonsense.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's just brings a lot more kind of peace into your existence,
for sure, for sure.
being
I mean,
not having to worry about all of that nonsense. Yeah.
100%, 100%. For me,
Yeah.
I think one thing that I did have as a plus on my side was like I said, since 2014, I was working remote. So my
Yeah.
work times were flexible. I didn't have to commute. I didn't have a 9 to 5 job, none of that. But having said that, there were many days, I mean, the majority of days, I'd find myself working till 1 a.m.
Yeah. Right.
simply because I'm splitting my time. I'm not doing a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, wait a minute, this is kind of counterproductive. It's not really serving
Yeah.
my purpose. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of that, you're working into the early hours of the morning. Do you have
Mm.
any habits or routines that you keep to make sure you keep focused and productive and not burning out? And is there anything like that you want to share with us?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have two children, like I said, so they're at school between the hours of 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that's the time I give. That's my solo time, basically. So I try to fit in all my meetings, my you know the chunk of work that is really deep work for me,
Yeah.
all goes into that time.
Yeah.
Anything important, anything that requires serious attention or serious focus goes all into that time. So when they're back, I try to attend to like admin things, which again, as founders, we have to do admin, social media, marketing, all the other little bits of work that need to get done after
Right.
they're home. And then that gives me plenty of time to spend time with them and to, focus on my
Mm.
hobbies and things that I like, etc. So
Yeah.
I found that works quite well. Whereas previously in my corporate role, I can't set the time of my meetings. I can't set,
Exactly.
what times
Yeah.
I need to work. Sometimes I'm needed at, 5 p.m. and then that's non-negotiable. I can't choose that.
Mm.
So yeah, for sure, this has kind of helped a lot. Even work meetings I can schedule.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, that's kind of what
Mm.
keeps me going.
Yeah, that's awesome. I see we've got a couple of people watching live, so I want to encourage you if you have questions for Amani, please drop them in the comments on the channel that you're watching on. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. So if you have a question, please drop it in, and we'll have a look at it, and Amani can answer you.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your your future growth and where you're going with this company, how do you see Rematics developing over the next couple of years?
I think the goal for us right now is to focus on the UAE and the Gulf market. And my dream would be to, become a recognized name for startups in the startup space and in the SME space
Mm,
as well. To be the go-to name for financial models, for financial coaching, and financial research services in general,
mm.
because those are our core areas, and that's what we want to continue specializing in.
I want to ask you about financial research. Financial research is kind of a big word. I mean, can you
Yeah,
kind of just dig in a little bit there as to what kind of financial research you typically do and who do you do it for?
right. So generally, we do industry research and company research, where we have clients come to us and say, okay, we want to look into, I don't know, the milling sector, the milling
Right.
industry, for example, just random.
Yeah.
And they want us to do like a sector report on, say, e-commerce, for example. So that's the kind of work we do. In terms of company research, they give us, we've had clients come to us with a list of companies and say we need company profiles, and we need, so that'll have like an intro section, services section, financial section, etc. So kind of
Hmm.
like mini reports. That's what we do. And we've also had clients come to us with, we want 100-word profiles, 200-word profiles for like 5,000 companies.
Oh wow!
And
So what is that exactly? So they want a
it's for their
profile on
database.
200
It's for their
companies.
data. Yeah. It
Okay,
can be, it's usually like tech companies who are building like large databases, and they want us to do like the profiles to put on that database.
I see. I see.
So,
Okay.
yeah. We also do annual reports. That's a huge
Yeah.
part we do.
Okay.
Um, and so we do annual reports, front to back, right from the intro to the end. So the
Yeah.
entire annual report, we'll have a client come to us and say, "Look, we want annual report done." We do the entire content, and then
Hmm.
we hand it over to them, and they handle the design, print, etc. So yeah, those are some of the main areas that we do in terms of financial research and writing.
It's an incredibly niche thing. I mean, to say
Mhm.
we're doing that kind of financial reports, I get, but I mean to say to doing that kind of very specific research on certain sectors. I mean, I find that fascinating. I love that kind of
Yes,
insight and kind of knowledge that comes out of that kind of
and of
research.
yes, and of course, our core area is modeling, financial modeling and valuation.
Okay,
Yeah.
and but that modeling is that more focused on startups, or is that you do that for big companies as well?
No, mostly SMEs and startups. Mostly
Yeah.
SMEs and startups, because that's our
Mm.
target audience,
Yeah.
and that's who we want to help. And again, when I said research, it can start from macroeconomic research and go all the way down to competitive analysis, micro
Sure.
analysis, etc. So it all depends on what the companies want us to look at, really.
Hmm. Okay. Okay, and do you have you thought about what kind of legacy you want your startup, your company to leave behind? Are you training your kids to take over from you? Or
um to be honest, when I started more than as a human being, I think I want to give them the understanding that their mom can be their mom and a good mom, hopefully, but she can also achieve whatever she wants,
Yeah,
while trying to balance that. And that's more or less the legacy I want to leave behind, so that when they grow up and they have, wives and daughters or whatever, they can take carry that with them, and then it's not a foreign concept, because especially in Asia, where my culture, I'm originally from Sri Lanka,
yeah,
and where we come from, it's still, it's sad to say it's 2024, but it's still, it's not many women who do that.
right, right.
So that's mainly the legacy I want to leave behind. Hopefully, I'd love it if they'd like to take over, but who knows?
They most probably find their own way, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
kids these days, yeah.
yeah. That's inspiring, Mani. That you kind of uh, someone who's setting the way, or hopefully inspiring for a lot of women in Sri Lanka to to say, well, yeah, if Mani can do it, I can do it. So that's awesome. So if you can go back, and to before you started, is there one piece of advice that you would give yourself, at that you could think, well,
Just one.
as many as you want.
I think one of the biggest ones is, and that's something, honestly, we find, we come across almost, maybe not daily, but almost weekly, especially as two you know female co-founders of a female-owned business, um, to just believe in ourselves a lot more. Sometimes we underestimate our experience, we underestimate, our what value we can add to clients, and even in the whole work process. I mean, we find this, and then we speak to people, we realize, sometimes it just comes down to being how organized you are and how
Mm,
professional you are in your work, and that kind of trumps everything else,
yeah,
in terms of work. And we realize, sometimes we have clients, we reach, we send them a quotation, they take weeks to get back to us. And
yeah,
whereas, we've been, I actually credit some of this to how, to my very first job, where we were trained to say, you need to reply to an email in 15 minutes
mm,
maximum. Even if you're going to say, I'll reply to you in detail later, that's all.
mm-hmm, right,
So things like that, in terms of being responsive, in terms of being organized. And then we realize, gosh, we really are smarter. So we
yeah,
kind of we kind of give ourselves less credit. And I think as women, we are kind of socially, mentally kind of programmed in such a way, for some reason. So I think that's one of the biggest things I would want to kind of tell myself.
believe in yourself.
Yeah, believe in yourself. Just
Yeah,
don't underestimate who you are.
yeah, yeah. No, that's solid advice. That is for, and not just for starting a business, but in all spheres of
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
Is to just, yeah, because there's only one of you, and
Exactly.
every one of us brings something unique to this world. So, and
100%.
go do it, right?
Yeah. And as long as you found that, you've got conviction in, and you found this space that, okay, this is my passion, this is what I bring to the world, and you
Yeah,
found that purpose, and you believe in it, and this is viable, why doubt yourself after that?
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's this concept of parallel universes. If you weren't leading a business, what do you think you would be doing?
Probably writing a book, as weird as that may sound.
Writing a book. Okay.
Yeah. I've always thought, I could always, there's, like you said, you really kind of said what I was going to say. Um, we all have something that we contribute to this world, and it's through our experiences, whether it's through our knowledge. So I would probably be writing a book. I don't know what it would be about, but I know I would want to leave something solid behind, for the
Hmm.
world to learn something from. And it doesn't matter
Yeah.
if the world doesn't. It's just, even if it's just my kids, that's all right. But
Yeah.
probably writing a book. Yeah. and
Okay.
maybe
Is
doing
is
some
that is that
counseling.
a public kind of declaration that we can expect a book from money at some point?
I don't know. Maybe doing some counseling as well, because I seem to be like someone people gravitate to with their issues a lot of times. So
Mm,
yeah, maybe that as well.
yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a awesome thing to kind of aspire to do. I hope you get the time and the
Yeah, the
and
time.
the ideas come flowing in that you can write that book. That would be amazing. So in this journey of yours, has there been people that have influenced you, that have inspired you, that you look up to, and maybe tell us about one or two of those people and why they inspire you.
So my biggest inspiration to start my entrepreneurial journey was my husband. He
Okay.
was constantly pushing me, saying, you always wanted to do this. Start, start, start. Just
Mm,
start.
mm,
And then he's the one who kind of really pushed me into it, because I think it's always been mulling in my head. But then from the time where he said, okay, now just do it, we kind of launched the business in a couple of months. It was
okay.
so I think that was my biggest influence and inspiration to start. And then my co-founder, I don't know what I would do without her. I think she's the one that keeps me sane through this entire process.
Mm,
We have very different personalities and very different ideas, so that's what kind of keeps the balance.
mm-hmm.
Um, so I think those are the two biggest people in terms of. I mean, if you're talking about you know people like public profile people, there's been so many. I mean, you read all the stories. I think the very first book about business that I read was Losing My Virginity, Richard Branson, and
Okay.
way back in the day. And then, so since then, every story you read, and I've always been interested in reading the stories of founders and CEOs, and see how they've navigated their lives. And so
Yeah.
each one you read, you kind of take away like one small thing, or like one thing that kind of relates to you, or that you can use, right?
Right.
So it's kind of hard to say, there's not one particular person. There's maybe little bits and parts of each person's story. But personally, these are the two main people who've
Mm,
been like
okay. Yeah.
influential.
If I think it'd be very very hard if the people in your immediate environment were not supportive of your journey, because it's hard, and it's not always certain that you're going to succeed. And yeah, so that is super important that your significant other is there with you. And
For
I'm
sure.
very fortunate in that sense as well. My wife is fully behind what I do, so that's yeah, that's a big win. It's a big win
I think
right
it's
out the
paramount.
gate.
I think it's impossible otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Um, are there any exciting projects that you're working on currently, and that you would like to share with us?
Yes, that's actually so. Like I think I mentioned it briefly earlier. So, in addition to doing financial models for startups and SMEs, we've recently done launched the financial coaching program.
Yeah.
So we've got two models in how we do it. So there are some people who would, if you just want generic coaching on how to kind of navigate numbers in general, we do
Hmm.
that. And then we do one where we customize it to your business.
Okay.
So you give us your business model, you tell us what you do, we build a financial model for you. And then or if you've got your numbers already, that's a different story. That's fine. You've got your numbers, you give us your numbers. We customize the coaching to your business. So,
Hmm.
how to understand your income statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow, very important liquidity ratios, working capital ratios, profitability ratios, um, um, things that any investor will ask,
Right.
any investor will touch upon. And so how to present that to investors,
Hmm.
because like I said earlier, most of the founders, they know their business model. The minute they're framed with, okay, why is your net profit margin this much? Why is your working capital so low? Or why is your, this ratio so high? They have no idea what to say
Yeah, because they don't understand the fundamentals, right?
because they don't understand the fundamentals. And
Mm.
unfortunately, investors are all about the numbers. So
Right, right, right.
I think that's the new that we that's the latest thing we've launched recently, and I'm really excited to promote that and to have people come, you know, experience that with us so that we can help them be investor ready. It's called our investor ready with Rematics.
Okay, awesome. Amani, that's amazing. So, in terms of if people want to get in touch with you, how what's the best way to reach you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Amani Iqbal. Our company website is the main place space for all our information, www.rematics.co. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. A company page is on all of those. Plus, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn personally as well.
Okay, Amani, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and yeah, I'm very excited for you and for your co-founder on your journey, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much for having me, Herman. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you, and you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.